morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the rest of you. We are back for another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. It is I, your host, Q, coming to you live from my mother's basement. And I'm joined by my co-hosts, Alex McShane and Chris Alemo. How you guys doing?
Good, man. What's happening today? This price action's brutal, but other than that, feeling good.
Doing well, doing well.
Before I make up my technical analysis on price action, I need to ask Brian Armstrong lookalike what the actual hell is going on over at Coinbase right now.
I don't know, man. I never know what's I don't even think Coinbase even knows what's going on at Coinbase at this point. They've got
Well, for those who didn't catch the news, what I'm referencing right now is the fact that a couple of days ago, or maybe at the end of last week, Goldman Sachs announced an opportunity to where they are going to accept Bitcoin as collateral for loans. And it was just now made public that the very first offering of said loan was given to Coinbase. And we talk a lot on this show, and you hear it all across the ecosystem of, take your coins off of exchanges. It's simply an IOU. Some of the biggest whales that a lot of the technical analysts out in the Bitcoin ecosystem sort of flag, they bring up, like, these are probably just exchanges that are custodying at all of these Bitcoins on behalf of their user base. Well, here you have said exchange who custodies Bitcoins on behalf of their user base now going to a bank and using Bitcoin as this collateral for a loan. Did they actually go leverage long on your Bitcoin? We don't actually have that necessarily, that detail flushed out at this moment. They could very well have some sort of Bitcoin on reserves. However, I don't believe they actually do have Bitcoin on reserves. I'm going to try to Google this live because I'm literally just having this thought in my head right now. But because they're a publicly traded company, they need to disclose what they're holding on their reserves.
no Coinbase has Bitcoin.
All right.
They don't have a lot, but they have
okay.
some. They bought it very late in the game. If I'm right, I think they bought it 2 or 3 quarters ago, and not a whole lot.
So it is fair to say we cannot yet conclude that they are using the Bitcoins that they're holding on behalf of their clients for this leveraged loan. However, they have now gone ahead and taken a leveraged long position on Bitcoin in the same vein as Michael Saylor, almost. I don't know what your thoughts are there, Alex, on whether or not this looks similar or not to what MicroStrategy is trying to do.
What are the details on the loan? Do we know anything?
No, all at this point that I've been made aware of, and we're genuinely Google searching this in real time, is that the very first Goldman-backed Bitcoin loan was given to Coinbase.
Okay. Yeah, I guess to be determined. I mean, I will say, fair enough. Coinbase also offers their own leveraging platform, so you're going to see a lot of this fractional reserve shitcoinery and Bitcoinery. I think this is a good example. I mean, it's a good thing in the sense that institutions are getting involved in Bitcoin. It's nice to see Goldman offering financial instruments, even if they're not ones that are particularly useful to everyday users of Bitcoin. But it's a nice reminder to take your Bitcoin off the exchange, because if there's a run on exchange, they simply can't pay you out, and they surely can't pay everybody out if they've lent it on fractional reserve, to Goldman Sachs or someone else. So
what are your thoughts, though, at the fact that, we're seeing now multiple big money players, Coinbase and Michael Saylor, taking these leveraged loans against their Bitcoin? Whether or not Coinbase is using it to buy more Bitcoin, it's still, I think, a very interesting signal that's being sent to the market that some of these biggest players are genuinely believing that number will go up.
Yeah, I think it's bullish. I mean, I I wouldn't expect them to behave any differently. Bitcoin is pristine collateral. I mean, if I was lending out money, there's nothing I'd rather receive as collateral than Bitcoin from someone. So makes sense to me. I think, yeah, like overall the trend is bullish. I think it'll continue. It's nice to see these types of moves still being made, even though it doesn't feel like the sentiment for the next, the second half of the halving here. It doesn't feel like Bitcoin is going to the moon. It doesn't feel like people are moon boying or excited really about Bitcoin in terms of price anymore. So it's nice to see growth and adoption continue despite that in the Central African Republic, a little bit in Panama. Yeah.
It's interesting too, though, because we hear the positive news, we hear the negative news, but to your point, the numbers, Bitcoin's value, that is, just seems to be pretty flat at this moment. You've been very pronounced saying that maybe you haven't been pronounced on a public forum, but at least amongst ourselves, you have definitely been a little bit more bearish than most. What are some
Yeah.
things why are you taking such a bearish stance? I'm curious, genuinely curious, and putting you on the spot.
That's fine. I'm happy to be the bear. I because cheap Bitcoin excites me, man. I miss buying Bitcoin for fucking $10,000. You know what I mean? Like I miss the cheap opportunity to accumulate. I think these bear markets are great for accumulating and learning. When the Bitcoin price is going through the moon, you just have to hold on tight. The news is coming too fast. Like I don't really learn too much. I don't take a lot of risks or play around with new hardware when we're in a raging bull market and just getting like parabolic moves. You just become too fixated on price to get anything done. So I don't have any real technical analysis for why we should be in a bear market. It just feels to me that the price is flat and that the excitement has waned. And I believe in the super cycle theory. I think the halving has a huge impact on the price so far, and I think it will continue to. Maybe it won't, but we'll see. So far, it looks like we're going to trend sideways, if not a little bit downward, until the next halving. So my plan is to accumulate, educate myself, and just enjoy life, man.
When did you become a hippie?
A hippie?
No,
Yeah.
I'm just
Probably
teasing you.
within the last few years, but yeah.
So, as you're well aware, my favorite question and just sort of the topic that I have been genuinely asked to stop spinning up is regarding to this correlation between the Nasdaq and the price of Bitcoin. I just want to point out a couple of things that I'm picking up on, and I'm curious what this could mean for the broader markets, both Bitcoin as well as stock market. I also, when you will go back and watch this, you will realize I fully hijacked the Bitcoin show to talk about stocks for the next half hour. So on November 10th, Bitcoin made the all-time high price of just under $69,000 a coin. It was the day that Dylan LeClaire was the most famous he's ever been. It was the day many Bitcoin enthusiasts celebrated and lauded and laughed at Peter Schiff. We then very quickly reversed and haven't seen the 70K or come frankly close to it ever since. On the Nasdaq, if you go to, I'm going to move this so I can actually read the dates. So on November 10th was a day of decline on the Nasdaq, and the Nasdaq didn't reach its all-time high until about November 22nd. So that's 12, almost 2 weeks later that the Nasdaq makes its all-time high, and Bitcoin has already been in a bit of a decline ever since. It is worth noting that based on current prices of Bitcoin, you are looking at an over 40% decline in the price of Bitcoin from this all-time high to present day. On the Nasdaq, we are currently just over 20% of a decline. Now, here's where things get a little interesting, in my opinion. Bitcoin made its most recent low on January 24th. The Nasdaq, however, made its most recent low yesterday. So while it is sort of shaping out in the same up-down motion, it definitely feels like you're getting a lot of similarities in the price action. However, it feels like the Bitcoin is a leading indicator to the NASDAQ. So for all of you degenerates out there, feel free to treat NASDAQ as a different type of futures market to, no, sorry, treat Bitcoin like a supplemental future market for the Nasdaq, that you can trade the Nasdaq in your options and YOLO option or whatever you crazy degenerates like to do on Robinhood. But that's my pretend technical analysis for today. Alex,
I'm so bored by the Bitcoin price action. Yeah, I wish I wasn't, but honestly, it's exciting when the price goes crazy. And like I said, it kind of frees up your time when the news is slowed down like this. So I actually considered downloading Robinhood again and checking out, seeing what happens. Like every once in a while, you just got to learn a hard lesson about when you try to trade Bitcoin. Like you just start with a, I don't know, $10, $100 worth of Bitcoin and just see if you can trade it. And you just fucking can't, man. I can't. Maybe you can. Chris, can you?
I cannot trade. No, I got very lucky in some of my trades in my past, but those days are behind me. I got luckily unscathed and didn't get harmed by anything aside from, like I've said before, having stuff locked up in 401ks. That still haunts me. But we're figuring out plans for that, guys. I agree with Alex. I think this is the most exciting time. If you're a real Bitcoiner, this is the time that you love, that you can learn. You can experiment with different hardware wallets. I've ordered a bunch. They haven't showed up yet. I'm convinced NBK hates me. Everyone else is posting online that they got their MK4s. I'm sitting here and I haven't gotten mine. So no, but in all seriousness, if the price was going from what are we at? 38K, 39? I don't even know, to be honest. I haven't looked at multiple days. And
38.1.
38.1. No. If we were going from 38.1 to like 100K, 200K, like that's when bad decisions are made, when you're panicking to move your money off exchanges, when you accidentally slip and fat finger an address, when you're trying to send it somewhere. That's when like all the chaos is breaking out. I guess it's entertaining. It's good for viewership. People feel like they're getting rich overnight, but I'd say it's definitely a dangerous time, and you're more prone to make mistakes when there's panics. This is your time to send Bitcoin to just send $5 from your cold storage or from just an exchange to a random wallet that you're testing out. Moon Wallet, Blue Wallet. I know we've mentioned a bunch of wallets before. This is your time to test an experiment. Don't do crazy amounts, but you test a little bit, send it there. If you were to lose it, you don't feel as bad. If your phone were to break or the device were to get compromised or whatever it may be. Obviously, look at Bitcoiner guides. We've mentioned multiple times, Bitcoin Q&A made it. I know Odell talks about it all the time. Really cool to try out different things. Try to get non-KYC sats. Buy $25 gift card from Amazon and try and do robo-sats, which I did, which I almost got rugged, but I didn't get rugged, but I wouldn't feel bad because it's only $25. So this is your time to experiment and learn. That's just my theory on it.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity, like you said, to try out new hardware, but also just software tools. I mean, the blocks it's really low sat for byte right now, sat v byte. If you check mempool.space or maybe your own instance, if you have a node, you can, set up multiple instances of mempools and, check them all out and see. It's a good time to consolidate your UTXOs. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a good time to look that up and learn. The idea being that eventually, Bitcoin's going to be relatively expensive to transfer. Block size is scarce, as we know. And so the fees will go through the roof. It's happened before. And at that point, it becomes very expensive to send Bitcoin. And you don't want to have all these small amounts of Bitcoin floating around UTXO-wise in your wallet. So you consolidate them into a single output, send it back to yourself. It's a very interesting exercise to just send kind of Bitcoin to yourself in your own wallet. Have you've done that before, right, Chris?
Yep. Yeah.
Did I explain it well? Am I missing?
Yeah.
I always feel stupid when I do technical talk, but
I mean, I think you did a pretty good job. I mean, the way that I always try and differentiate is just like, imagine you have a 20, a 5, and a 1 in your wallet, and you're just like trying to make them into a $26 bill. I mean, I know that's hard concept to wrap, but like, if you could make whatever bill size you wanted by combining them, that's what I would consider it. So for example, if, let's use Alex as an example. He bought $20, then $5 the next day, and then $1 the next day. And as he withdrew them each day separately. So, he withdrew the $20 worth of Bitcoin, the $5 worth of Bitcoin, and $1 worth of Bitcoin. Those are separate lines on the ledger of the blockchain. So, from Alex is probably using Strike, from Strike to his wallet. And that would be the $20 transaction, the $5, and the $1. When he consolidates them, it makes them into one UTXO, meaning that instead of being separate ledgers or separate lines on the ledger, it's one ledger itself. So, if you buy $1 million of Bitcoin, it consolidates to one address. That's very different than if you bought, $100,000 10 different times. That means in the future, if you wanted to send that $1 million worth of Bitcoin, it would be more expensive because it's basically
more memory.
Yeah, it's going to be basically like the ledger has to do like a VLOOKUP if you know Excel, where it's basically trying to take, where are these 10 addresses in the blockchain? It's got to find all of those and then put that into a new hash for the output for the new address, basically. So it would be cheaper to send 1 million sat or 1 million Bitcoin that's all in one UTXO versus 10 $100,000 equivalent of Bitcoin. I hope that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. That's why we have an engineer on the show. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So consolidating addresses is a great time to do that. But also, I think, Whirlpool would be something fun to try out if you've been in Bitcoin for a while and you want to try to up your OPSEC. What is the jury still out on this? Does coin joining work or not?
I'm leery about it. I mean, we got to get Odell back on. He would have a better stance on it. I know Wasabi, a lot of people, if you're coin joining on Wasabi, and this is completely factual, they have kind of went and they are trying to basically use chain analysis or a company of that sort to track people as they're coin joining. What that basically means is they're trying to see who is coin joining and who's just basically trying to get around know your customer laws or regulations. And I know Odell always talks about privacy is not secrecy. Privacy is selectively deciding what information you share to the public. So, if Alex goes to the grocery store to buy groceries, like, why do Q and I need to know that he did that? What are they going to say? Oh, Alex bought beef. He's wasting CO2. We got to stop him from transacting. Like I know that sounds crazy, but that's kind of like the dangerous slippery slope we go down. I mean, I love Alex. I love beef. I would have no problem with that. But there are people in this world that seem to have a narrative that they're pushing that they have problems with certain purchases, whether it's beef, whether it's for a firearm, whether it's for whatever their reasoning or logic, they could try and prevent you by blacklisting or whitelisting, whatever you want to call it, addresses. So basically what Wasabi was doing is they're now taking payments from the coin joins and they're paying a chain analysis company to look for bad actors, whether that's from an on-chain address or whatever. Alex, you have a question?
Yeah, is that due to a government compliance thing? Like, why would Wasabi choose to hurt their business like that? Or does it benefit that? I thought it was maybe to prevent people from double coin joining and like wasting some kind of free first coin join or some deal like that.
Yeah, I mean, only speaking from what the CEO of Wasabi said to Namcios of Bitcoin Magazine in one of the articles, it was not because of any impending legislation. And this is only what the CEO said to Namcios. But basically what he was saying, he's like, it's not because of legislation. I believe the CEO also had a Twitter thread on it. He's like, no, it's not because of legislation. We are doing it as preemptively. There is no law in place. There is no regulatory body that requires it.
So they're just playing God.
Yeah, I have no. I mean, exactly to Alex's point, it's cannibalizing their business, and I don't know. Go ahead, Q.
Or they're trying to prepare to go public, and so therefore they're trying to be in compliance of any laws that they fear they'd have to alter their business model around. And this could very well be a 10-year plan. This doesn't mean that they're going to go public in the next year, but they could be genuinely having that conversation of, if compliance goes in this direction and our goals are to be at this point based on the investors that have given us money and what we've promised them, that could genuinely be a route, which I think is more likely. I don't want to negate this. I wanted to present a question to Chris based on sort of that scenario you were bringing up. Wouldn't it be more likely for us to have the grocery stores rationed off? So like there's only so much beef available at the grocery store. And like in the same way it was during the COVID pandemic, some grocery stores were like, you can only buy one toilet paper pack, like shit like that. We've seen that happen. Is that not more likely than like what you've essentially described, which is a social credit system where the free market will give you everything, but then it's on your community to shame you into doing what's right and wrong? which like we've never really seen that succeed in our society, but we have seen the government.
What do you mean? That I feel like that social contract is everything in our society at this point.
It is, but it's also not, because you can still find a community within our current ecosystem that adheres to and believes what you believe, if you so
Right.
choose to seek that out. Whereas,
but like the majority of people, didn't they not inject experimental drugs into their veins just because they thought it was cool?
Depending on where what subsect of the population you look at, sure.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, what's like the broader question? I'm interested because I worked at a grocery store during the pandemic. So the question is,
I'm more curious, like, do we think that the scenario where Chris described, where like Chris and I are giving you shit for going and buying beef, is more likely, or just the grocery store and the government limiting the supply of beef to begin with?
I think it's both. I think the government sets that mandate due to social pressures and they then become amplified because of just wokeness. And I don't think it's a controlled of narrative as we think. I think what happens is there's feedback loops in the algorithms on social media that reinforce these things. I think that's what happened with the pandemic. People came to the government and said, we should be fucking worried about this. We don't know what it is. And the government overreacted. And then the people overreacted because they saw that across the board on their platform, especially news organizations, their numbers were through the roof because they had everybody scared. So it's kind of like a weird, I don't know. It's just like a very strange outcome of us having too much data and not enough scientific analysis of that data, but like monetary incentives for reading it in a certain way. Sorry, Chris, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No worries. I think that's really good. I mean, Q, I guess I'm not a forecaster, but I guess it's kind of to Alex's point. It's one way or the other. I think that it's up to business owners if they want to limit that every person coming into their store is only allowed to have one steak because that's what they want to do. That's fully up to them. If Alex wanted to go in and mass buy all the steak and they wanted to sell it to him, I'm sure there'd be plenty of people that'd be pissed. But maybe we'll come back the next day. If Alex does it repeatedly, then they'll obviously get frustrated and have to shop elsewhere. But I'm assuming the business owner would be happy that someone's buying out all the stock of beef and it's not going to waste. And obviously you'd have frustrated customers that are like, this is the multiple days in a row without having beef, but they would probably shop elsewhere. And I think the market would ultimately iron out in the long run. I think we get like, not to get conspiracy, but tinfoil hat, I'll put that on. They've always talked about, or not already started talking about, Beyond Beef or like these fake soy initiatives. So if Alex or someone was buying all the beef or there's less beef on the market, I think that their way of, instead of raising more cattle and bringing more beef, they bring more fake or soy beef. That's the logical path I go down, whether it's logical or irrational or conspiracy theory. I think that's kind of what they do, but I'll leave it to Alex or Q to answer.
I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, at least I saw when I was working in like retail grocery, it's not only like the government and fear of repercussions. Like businesses, that's why they comply. They don't have any kind of like moral imperative. They don't give a shit about coronavirus. Like they just don't want to get fined every time someone walks in the store without a mask, right? We all know that. So it's ruled by fear. But when it comes to those products, there's actually like an economic incentive for them to adopt some bullshit like the Impossible Burger. Right. That's why you start seeing bigger and bigger vegan aisles at like Trader Joe's, because that's like the woke thing to do. There's like a whole new kind of like centralized industry that revolves around allowing people to consume to their heart's content, but making them feel good about that consumption. Right. That's like the MO of like Tesla, all vegan products, stuff like, the COVID industry, like all of these things, they make you feel like you're doing your part. They let you buy into this collective illusion of nationalism when really, I mean, you're not doing anything. And it also moves the goalposts in terms of, this is how they change CPI. When the cost of a steak gets too expensive for the average American, they stop buying fucking steak. they start buying Impossible Burgers or something, some garbage that's cheaper, you know, Doritos. Like, this is it's tough, man. I don't I don't know what else to say about it, really. Like,
Yeah,
it's tearing society apart.
yeah, and Q, before you go, I mean, we see it in everything. We're squeezing returns away, and that has, you know, to this point, beef gets too expensive. Okay, we'll do it with chicken. Oh, chicken gets too expensive. We do ground beef. Ground beef is too expensive. We're going to do it with Impossible Burger. We see it, you know, we went from coal to oil and gas to natural gas. Now it has to be solar and wind. And basically, you know, I know the whole ESG narrative is kind of an attack on Bitcoin. It's kind of Marty Bent's thing that he always brings up.
I'll go further. The ESG narrative is an attack on human civilization. It's not just Bitcoin.
Yeah,
you want to go back to the water wheel and windmills? Fucking hang out with the ESG folks. Like,
well, and coming from, I guess, an engineering background, the two things that you have to do with any engineering problem is mass balances and energy balances. What that basically means is, I'll keep this simple because the degree itself is very difficult to get and explain. But basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to draw a box around a system. And you're trying to look all of the inputs that go in and all the the outputs that come out. You do that for mass, meaning anything going physically in and out of the system, whether you're like, perfect example, my old employer, we used to burn garbage. So trash was going in and energy would come out. And yes, ash would be a byproduct. And there was a couple things that we didn't want that would be byproducts, but we'd have to figure out ways to deal with them. Ash, you know, glass, whatever it may be. And then energy is an output as well that we were looking for. And when you look at wind and solar, the only reason that they're really competitive right now is because of all government subsidies. It's kind of the same thing with Tesla. I know that Elon claims that he doesn't have any more subsidies any more than Ford and Chevron and all of that. It's just very interesting. I don't know. And yeah, so I jokingly made a tweet that said windmills are cobalt mills and solar panels are coal panels. People don't realize the amount of energy that goes into making them. If you do a mass and energy balance on their life cycle, it really doesn't outweigh the amount of excess CO2 you're putting into the atmosphere. So these people that are saying, oh, it's so bad, we want to limit CO2 and methane and all these different things, you might actually be increasing it by trying to do these windmills and also like solar panels. They take a lot of energy, they take a lot of coal, they take a lot of cobalt, and you just look up those processes. I don't need to explain them to you and show you the engineering steps. Just go into YouTube and Google cobalt mining or Google the process of how to make a solar panel. Very energy intensive, very coal minded. Go ahead, Q.
Before I kick it to Alex to go on his mini rant, which we're going to go uninterrupted, Alex McShane for at least 5 minutes straight. So strap in, guys, because he's coming after one of you in the comments. I want to present an idea though, back to you, Chris, because I buy into this narrative. I know it very well. And I understand that, like, for example, there was the whole narrative around hybrid car batteries and the actual metals being used to manufacture the hybrid car batteries was more harmful to the environment at the end of the life of the car than just having a normal gas guzzling car and at the end of the life for that car. Do you think, though, that this is due in large part because our society, especially right now, is just black or white, very polarized, and everything has to be either you're on this side of the argument or you're on this side of the argument, and we can't look at this discussion and say, hey, these are both literally the same side of the coin and we need a new solution? Rather, we're just sort of like spinning up the latest argument or the latest whatever and pitting it on this side of the coin or this side of the coin, when in reality it's no different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to look at all of the inputs and outputs of everything. So perfect example, in engineering or even just in the marketing of it, everyone says how great Teslas are. And don't get me wrong, they seem like a cool car, fun to drive. I don't know if I'll ever have one, maybe not. But we don't look at the flip side when things go wrong. Engineers do this, sales guys definitely do this. Like, look at how great this car is. You know, we don't use gas, we do this, X, Y, and Z. So one, they don't look at the input costs of how it takes to build them, the lithium batteries that are needed for it. But perfect example, look at when things go wrong. I know Teslas, you know, can avoid accidents, so they claim, but that doesn't mean that Teslas don't get in accidents, and they don't happen. If you want to look up something that's really crazy, most cars, when they get in an accident, they're not the explosion like you see in the movies. Like, and even like gasoline, when a car catches on fire, it's not very explosive in the way it is. Yes, if it's a tanker truck or an 18-wheeler transporting gas, that's a different story. But like when it's just a car, and if it were to catch fire, it's not explosive like Mission Impossible style. But if you want to look up a Tesla or a lithium battery car as it catches on fire, it's catastrophic. You know, it doesn't take much for if that battery, the lithium ion battery, gets punctured, and just look at the flames that erupt from a Tesla or any all electric vehicle. You know, I don't want to say like it's impossible for someone to get out, but it goes up quick. You can cause a lot of damage to potentially the environment around them or even the people riding in the vehicle, you know, and that's just something that people don't weigh the benefits of. Like, yeah, this may be better for the environment, but in the event of a failure, this could kill someone much more. This can kill someone by comparison of a normal car. And I'm not saying, you know, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, like X amount of cars kill more people more, but it's just something that people don't look at when they're comparing the two.
Well,
Alex?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I could hardly listen. I'm trying not to laugh about everything in the chat. It's getting a little heated in our YouTube chat. We should probably drop some Bitcoin for those guys. All right, let's talk about this. So ethically, I mean, let's just be honest. I kind of agree with Axel Fuzz. You know, if you're gonna eat meat, you should at least acknowledge that that's murder. However, as a vegan or a vegetarian, you need to understand what happens when you plow a field. Like, you need to take a ride in a fucking combine and go look at the holocaust that occurs when you're done plowing that field, because you've even just baling hay, you're baling in snakes, rabbits, you know, you're destroying the habitats of millions of animals and creatures every time you plow a field, every time you sow seeds, every time you just like farming, man, it destroys and is also murder. So I don't see a difference between those two things. Like, I think we're on this earth, and like undoubtedly we're like apex predators of this earth. So I'm cool with the murder. Like, grow up, have a farm, have slaughtered animals, no problem with it. I'm cool with it. So like, I own that. So I eat meat. I've been a vegetarian too, though, on the other hand. So like, what does this have to do with Bitcoin? Like, we'll get to that in a second. But like, you know, the vegetarians and the vegans, I think it's great if that makes you feel better about yourself. But like, let's be honest about what you're doing there. You're not morally above people who eat meat, and you really shouldn't preach that, because they're both murder. You're killing animals either way. Like, the only ethical way out of this is to kind of take yourself out of the equation, because, you know, well, also it's ironic that a lot of these vegetarians and vegans end up having pets. That's a form of slavery. I mean, that might sound like crazy to some people, but like, I have pets. I have a dog. That's you're enslaving another animal. I mean, it's dubious at best, but you know, again, fine with it. I think the right answer here, I think that the right thing to do ethically, in my opinion, small farm, get your own plot of land, hunt for your own food, slaughter your own meat. If you don't want to eat meat, plant your own vegetables, raise your own crops, and eat them. Everybody's happy, right? But I don't think you can be a vegan who's shopping at Trader Joe's and then think bad about people who are going to the steak aisle to grab steak. That doesn't make sense. Like, you're a consumer, you're laying waste to the environment just as much as everybody else is. So that's my 2 cents. How does Bitcoin fit into the equation? I think a lot of like libertarians and Bitcoiners, and we're going to talk to Texas Slim here tomorrow, I think. We're going to get more into that, because I think Bitcoin is a great value add to literally everything, but it really incentivizes and helps make possible the kind of living that I think we're mostly in agreement here that we want to work toward, which is a personal citadel of some sort. You know, some land to tend to, and you know, something to grow, or some animals to raise to trade value in the form of Bitcoin for. So Bitcoin fits really nicely into that kind of libertarian, sovereign individual mindset. It's almost like it was designed that way. It's beautiful. So That's my 2 cents. That's my rant. I don't know if Chris or Q want to respond if I said anything that was too off base, but
No, I mean, I think you kind of have the Citadel theory, the Bitcoin Citadel theory that like, and I think, I don't want to say it's like minimalist, but a lot of people say in the Bitcoin community, like you're saving sats for your future self. You know, it's the best saving vehicle. You know, don't buy that new pair of shoes, you know, buy a cheaper pair if you need, and then buy the Bitcoin with the excess. I think that's kind of the mentality that Alex is saying, and what you're saying with farming and stuff, I don't know it personally as well as you. But like to your point, like if everyone only used what they needed and not what they wanted, we would be in a much better place globally, I would say. I mean, not to us being Americans, I can speak for three of us that were Americans, like overall, America uses a lot more on knickknacks or pointless things that we don't need compared to the rest of the world. And I know that's kind of the Triffin dilemma where we have to export dollars in order to get cheap things. It's kind of built into the system. And we're trying to break that with a new system that is Bitcoin. So I guess that'll just leave that at my 2 cents, 2 sats.
yeah, I think I'm trying to keep up with Axel because I was kind of interested in what he says to say. Axel says, because we can, and people are wondering what this has to do with Bitcoin. Well, the Bitcoiners are talking about it in the chat, so we're going to address it. If I could kill a weaker human, does that make it more ridiculous? No, you didn't understand my argument. You're a predator by nature. You're born that way. That's what you were. Whether you want to embrace that or not is on you. I'm just saying it's ridiculous to pretend you're holier than thou just because you don't eat meat. Like that's not a valid argument because you're just not at the source laying waste to these animals. But how does food get on your table? I don't think you're growing it at home. I highly doubt that you're watching this video and not, causing some second or third order harm to the environment. So my stance is I already owned it, dude. I eat meat. I slaughter animals. It's fine. You can call it murder. It's fine. That's what we're here for. We're apex predators. Q, what do you think? You don't eat too much meat, do you? You're like more of a vegetarian.
I genuinely do try to limit the amount of meat I eat, but like that's just because I got to a point where I realized how much I overeat. And I think a lot of it goes back to American food culture and that like we really try to get full on each meal. And I just found myself like sluggish after each meal. And so like in a perfect world, dude, I won't really eat meat until the very end of the day. That's just like my MO. And even there are times where like if I don't eat meat in a whole day, like I'm fine with that. But that's my personal choice. That's based on the diet that I think best suits me and lets me excel at everything that I need to excel.
Oh, it looks like whoever Fanny is in the comments, just like, I just wanted to hear you talk about Bitcoin. We talk about Bitcoin every day. We're talking about Bitcoin now. We're circling it back to Bitcoin. This is important because the end game, like what is your goal? Bitcoin is, I think, principally driven by principles. So it really begs the question, like, what are your principles? So what do you eat is kind of the common question every human has to ask themselves. And I think that fits really nicely into like, how do you spend your time? Why are you accumulating Bitcoin? What are you going to do with your Bitcoin in the future? That all comes down to your principles and ethical questions. I think it's totally great up for debate, unless I'm wrong, guys. Do we have to make a more direct tie to Bitcoin than that? To tie it back, I mean, this is one of the few things
I'm not interrupt you. We do not need to tie it back. We're having a genuine philosophical discussion that is often ignored. If that's the conversation we want to have, that's the conversation we're going to have. Bitcoin solves and fixes everything. It does.
I think, yeah. Well, I don't know about that's a wild claim right there, but I do want to say I think it does help solve this. I think. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. The reason it's important is because this, I would presume Axel spends his money on vegan, like mass produced, like kind of like consumer goods, like plants, like shit like that. And I choose to spend, some of my Bitcoin or my money on meat. So that's kind of why we're talking about this. It's just like, which is better?
You know what?
It's like, what's up,
Alex?
What?
Can we give the chickens some sats?
Oh yeah. Dude, I'm trying to get that set up. It's tough because I'm not in Iowa, but I have chickens and I want to give them a lightning dispenser. We didn't talk about this on this show yet, did we?
No, we talked about it. If you guys didn't get a chance to Check out Why We Are Bullish on BTC Sessions channel. Alex was featured on it last Friday. Give us a quick summary of what you wanted to cook up.
Okay, so this is 100% happening. I'm just not sure when because I have to find time to get back to Iowa to set it up. But I've got a kind of like a food dispenser, a couple different feed dispensers for my chickens. They eat just nonstop. You have to give them, food and water and watermelons and oats, and they just eat anything. But I think I should have a dispenser that is Lightning enabled. So people on Twitter and people can send a little bit of Bitcoin. I don't know, a sat, 2 sats. Can't be expensive, right? I'm not trying to make Bitcoin off this. It's just like a fun, real life Lightning enabled thing. So they send their sats over the internet, and then it dispenses like some pebbles for the chickens. And they flock over, and I just set up a camera that's there 24/7. I've already got actually 24/7 cameras on them. So I just need to hook those up to the internet, and then you guys can watch my chickens eat food as you pay them, a little bit of sats. We'll obviously spend the sats. There's a little bit of trust involved, but we'll obviously spend the sats on the chickens and protecting them from the coyotes. But if you drop enough food, maybe you can see a raccoon go in there. Maybe you can see a coyote break in and eat all the chickens. It could get pretty exciting.
We're implementing the live stream in the bottom left. I'm joking, guys, but we're going to implement the chickens in the bottom left corner 24/7 of the stream.
We might as well. Well, I think what we could also do is have like a separate part of the pen where you guys have to keep paying me Bitcoin to not open the gate to let the coyotes in, because that's the scariest part about the farm where I'm from. Is just like at night you just hear, it's so quiet, and you just hear the wind, and you just hear the howling of the coyotes, and they're just dying to kill these chickens every night. They're trying to find a way to kill the chickens. One of the chickens got eaten by a hawk just a few weeks ago, actually.
So we got picked up off the ground.
Yeah, it just like murked it. So we got to get more overhead protection for the chickens as well. So you guys could send me Bitcoin to help keep these chickens alive.
Alex, I hope you know what you've now done is that scammer bot that's been creating all the fake Alex McShane Instagram accounts is now going to start asking people for sats to keep the coyotes away from the chickens.
Yeah, I think if I've got them, I might as well hold them hostage. What's the best Lightning network to get on? I don't even know how to answer that. What do you mean?
I think it's LND or Core Lightning. I mean, I use LND personally, but I wanted to experiment with Core Lightning.
What does Moon run on? LND, right?
LND, I believe. Yeah.
What's
like all those?
Strike's probably LND is definitely as well. Core Lightning.
There you go. That's
Core
your
Lightning
answer.
is more technical. I think there's more functionality on it, but you have to be a little bit more technical. So I'd recommend LND for Q. If you're a little bit more tech savvy and coding savvy, I'd say Core Lightning is probably the better one.
But they both have QR capabilities and like timed invoices. Like what are the differences between the networks, Chris, if you know?
I don't really know the differences. Like I said, it's just kind of more of I think it's like more of the code base and how you interact with it is basically what I know. I don't know behind the scenes thing. I'm pretty sure you can send from a Core Lightning address to an LND address. I mean, it's just they're the same network. It's just kind of the front like user interface of it, basically.
Right. Yeah, I'm interested. Did you guys see that Jack Mallers actually implemented the orange check mark by way of email?
Yep, I saw that. It's basically go ahead.
Well, you can drop sats. You can set an amount, kind of like a bounty on your email address. And if someone pays that amount, then they're free to send you emails, and that wipes out all the spam. I think we need that at Bitcoin Inc., man. I don't know about you guys, but I get like 20 to 100 emails a day that have nothing.
Stop entering your work email in those dumb raffles that you keep trying to win.
I think we also have bad OPSEC that our email has BTC media in it. So it's like,
don't tell people that. Don't broadcast that, because then everyone's going to figure out what our emails are.
No.
Yeah. So I think to answer the person's question in the chat, what is the best Lightning network? I think you should get Moon Wallet. I used to recommend Blue Wallet, but dude, Blue Wallet frustrates me because the Bitcoin and the Lightning, they make it feel like they're two different things. They're not interchangeable. And I have to spend money doing on-chain transactions to like fucking send it to myself. In Moon Wallet, I can receive Bitcoin or Lightning, and it's just one balance. of Bitcoin.
I will say Moon Wallet, I never used it until Alex was having issues with it for exactly that reason, sending from Lightning to Lightning. And the fees were pretty exorbitant because they're two separate things, on-chain versus Lightning, which are true. Moon Wallet just like you can generate a QR code and you can send to either or. It'll pick if it's coming from a Lightning address or an on-chain address, and it just knows the difference, which is really, really cool. I think that's, I forget what BIP that was. Is that BIP 8? Or I forget what it was. Like Cash App presented that at the conference too. They're now combining QRs to both be Lightning or on chain. It was one of their announcements.
Yeah, so they announced that, but I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I guess I can check right now. Have you used Lightning on Cash App yet?
I don't use Cash App that often. I'm more of kind of like a Strike user for stuff like that in general. But yeah, no, that would be cool. I haven't seen maybe the implementation of it. Where is I going to go with that? Yeah, so I will say the Blue Wallet has cool functionality of all the different types of wallets that you can do. You can do just a skeleton wallet, meaning that let's just say you have a cold card and you don't have the device, you can put in the XPub into the device and you can see on Blue Wallet without being able, like if someone were to grab my phone, they couldn't send the Bitcoin. It's just to view only. And you could set passwords or like make it so that way you can only see it by entering another password and stuff aside from
you can make like a watch only address.
Yep, exactly, a watch only address. But yeah, you can also do Lightning Wallet, which is non-custodial or custodial to start, but then you can hook it up with Electrum server to a node to do that. You can do on-chain Bitcoin, obviously. They had like a cool graphic that showed like the 9 different types of wallets that you could do. I think you could even have like one of them as a multi-sig. It was like showed a cool document. I'll see if I can pull it up on Blue Wallet.
Do you guys use widgets on your phone?
I do not.
Anyway, Strike has this really, I think, underused widget where you can get a nice price chart. If you have Strike on your phone, just across the top, it'll take up a whole banner. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, I'm literally about to go do. Actually, speaking of Strike.
Yeah. And then there's another. I don't know which app I got this from. Maybe Blue Wallet, but there's another Bitcoin market one that tells you sats per dollar price and the sats per byte fee for the next block. That's a Blue Wallet widget as well. But what I was gonna say is someone should make a widget that is that Strike Bitcoin price graph, but it's a watch only address. So when you're first new to Bitcoin, you're checking how much your Bitcoin is worth every 2 seconds. You can just have it right there handy on your phone. And now we're all.
I'm trying to set this up live on air.
Yeah, now we're all setting this up.
We're literally live on air, and Alex distracted us so bad that I'm trying to figure out how to add a new widget to my phone.
Do you call Jack Mahler's daddy since you love his custodial services so much? This is so funny. Demented. What are you, retarded? No, everybody likes Strike, dude. That's the cheapest Bitcoin on the market. I use I use most exchange. I have an account at like every Bitcoin exchange. Like I don't. We're partial to Jack because Jack rocks. Yeah. You've got the non-KYC guy.
I'm not telling my source, but I know a guy that knows how to get me some non-KYC sats. I won't say the means by how he gets them. But
also Axel, we got to keep going back to this. Axel, I've never met a vegan athlete. In all my years of training, professional fighting, I've never found a vegan that had a sustainable career. I'm sure there's a couple outliers. I'm sure there's some great examples of vegan athletes, but when it comes time to like move your body and like get work done, people eat meat. Just throwing that out there. But also, I don't know. It's interesting. Like your ancestors, and you're only here because people ate meat and learned how to farm and learned how to hunt. You can turn your back on all of that, but you should at least acknowledge like maybe that is a better direction for humanity. But the way that corporate farms are run now, like I said, it would be interesting to do one of your energy in, energy outs, Chris, of the murder of animals for fields. You know what I mean? To see, I wonder what the cost is. I truly wonder which one is it, like if we could ethically measure that somehow, which one is greater.
Yeah, there's a lot of inputs and outputs of that, so it'd be hard to track. This actually goes to a better point, tying in engineering. So like people talk about climate change and stuff, and I will agree. I mean, the climate's changing up or down. I mean, we used to be in an ice age years ago. It's getting warmer, it's getting colder and stuff like that. But to say that, like they know for a fact that only CO2 and or methane or these gases are what goes up and down, like you're tackling an impossible engineering problem that basically, I think Alex is right. He said something earlier of like, they're taking all this data in that we have with computers and stuff and saying we can correlate because of X, Y, and Z that this is causing climate change. And that's like impossible. I mean, it's hard enough to figure out how to burn garbage at one little plant at one location, let alone, or to manufacture a car or do any of these one individual things. And you mean to tell me you can know the whole global temperature and how it correlates to a few couple factors? That's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, it's not science that's replicatable.
Yeah.
It's not science. It's just, I mean, gathering data is one thing, but using it to just confirm whatever biases or whatever big spending agenda you have, if you're a government or a state, that's a totally different thing. But that's where we're at as a society. So how Bitcoin fixes this is it actually with its appreciation and its unconfiscatability and its inability to be kind of debased by unscheduled or inflation or centralized entities, it actually could have helped like companies and people have laboratories that they can sustain to study good science. And I think they'd be well incentivized to do that good science because people would trade value for value and actually pay Bitcoin for it. So in terms of like I don't think it's all together, darkness and gloom from here on out. I think Bitcoin provides like a pretty optimistic outlook in terms of the future of science and industry. And that includes, the ethics of farming or hunting or, raising animals.
So just real quick, following athletes are vegan. Lewis Hamilton.
Who's that?
Number one F1 racer in the world.
That's not a sport. That's not an athlete.
Okay. I figured you'd say that. So Novak Djokovic, number one tennis player in the world, is a vegan.
That's a fucking sport. That's cool.
As is Venus Williams since 2011. And she accredits the fact that she has been able to play as long as she has to the fact that she changed her diet to like prevent or keep weight off a disease that would have otherwise worn down her joints.
They're on steroids though, right?
Sure. Alex Morgan, who is one of the best women's soccer players for the U.S. national team.
Okay.
And this one was my personal favorite because I have no idea who this person is, but James Wilkes, MMA fighter, went vegan following an injury he sustained in 2011 and is the subject of the James Cameron produced vegan documentary Game Changers.
Okay, I'm looking him up right now. That's exciting because I was going to ask, like, is there a real athlete? Like, is there a fighter?
I cannot believe you do not think soccer and tennis are real athletes.
No, I was kidding. No, I do. I appreciate you bringing up those examples because I was wondering what like professional
I don't believe race
vegan
athletes are real athletes either. So I had a very hard time with that. But like Lewis Hamilton is too big of a name for us to like scoff and ignore.
I hadn't heard of him. I'm happy to scoff. I'd never heard of him. But I think
there's a lot of things you haven't heard of. Like
right. I think I mean same to you. But I think the thing to remember is at that level, they're not. They might not be eating meat, but they are supplementing with serious drugs. And
that's a heavy accusation to throw with no proof, especially on professional athletes whose careers are based on whether or not they test positive or negative. So no, I'm not going to allow that.
No. You don't know what you're talking about though. In professional training environments, these people, it's not drugs that are illegal. I'm not saying they're taking illegal steroids, but they're taking everything in the book they can to get a competitive advantage.
I don't doubt that, dude. I played college sports. Like I pump my body with creatine almost every single day just to keep
exactly. So you understand that they're taking everything they can to get a competitive edge, including substances that haven't been banned yet. And I'm not making a judgment on that. I'm just saying it's not pure veganism.
But on that metric, these people who have now taken all of these additional supplements to give themselves an edge, do you not see the hole in your argument that meat provides you that extra edge when these people, these athletes who are some of the best at their sport, have gone and proven that in fact they can still compete against everyone else who they're all using the same supplements or variation of said supplements, and the differentiating factor in their diets are some of them are eating meat and some of them are not.
I mean, you provided three, like, frankly, it's not the norm, Q. And also, you know, this martial artist never fought since he went vegan. So, you know, I'm still waiting. I don't know whether and to what extent like these people maintain a vegan diet. I know a lot of people dabble in it. But it's just not the most efficient route, man. Like, what are you gonna eat? How are you gonna fill up your body? You gonna eat beans all day? Like, you're just gonna be nutrient deprived.
I think
I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to have like crazy feats as a vegan athlete, but that is not the path of least resistance by any means.
And I mean, I'll say, I mean, more power to him. If you can be a top level athlete, or even anyone, if you want to be vegan, but we've seen this world over the last 2 years, people not going with a narrative or not doing something. You know, you hope to believe that you can give everyone's choice to what they want to do, with what they want to eat, with what they want to ingest, what they want to, I mean, whatever. As long as you're not doing any harm to other people, that's kind of where it kind of is.
Yeah, we've really strayed here. Axel is now calling me ignorant in the comments, despite giving me, like, no one can offer a counter argument. I mean, I think we're all in agreement here. Like, this, do whatever you want to do. Don't enforce your belief, like force your beliefs down other people's throats. But yeah, I don't know. What's our next? Do we have any more news stories or another direction we can take this outside of food? Diet's a very personal thing, man. I don't think Bitcoin solves for that.
I mean, do we want to jump into CTV a little bit?
We can jump into CTV. Yeah, let me what do we want to cover? Soft fork versus hard fork, how proposals should be accepted, vaults, fungibility, congestion control, mempool division. What else do we got? Replaced by fee. We could do the user rejected soft fork. Is that the URSF?
Yeah.
Do you know the difference between those two? Because I don't quite understand. They're both ways to signal either support or non-support for any given proposal. Is that how that works?
I think so. I've looked into it briefly. So this is just from what I've read, but basically a user accepted soft fork and a user rejected soft fork, or USAF or SUSRF. Basically that could cause another split in Bitcoin, if I read into it correctly. And that's kind of what happened with the fork wars of 2017, 2018. People were trying to signal for, I always mix it up. Was it SegWit 2x? So SegWit and SegWit 2x are two separate things. SegWit is segregated witness, where basically the signatures were separated from the witness data, which is the blockchain. So blockchain is witness data, meaning that you have to look up where it is in the blockchain to see where the address is. The signature is you signing the transaction to spend the Bitcoin or the UTXO. SegWit 2x was the big blockers claiming that they wanted to bump up from 1 megabytes per transaction to was it 10 or 100 megabytes per action?
It was a schedule. It was a schedule. So it was 1, and then it was 2, and then it was, did it go up by 2 or did it double? I think it doubled.
I
so
think it
1,
doubled.
2, 4, 8, 16.
And then it was going to cap at somewhere around maybe 1,000 megabytes per block, or maybe 100.
It was going to cap. It was issued by time. So it was going to cap after a certain block height in like the year 2000, I don't know, 36 or something. I don't remember the time scale, but it was a pretty far out that year.
Yeah, but I guess we'll rehash the argument. So what basically happened during the block size war is companies were saying that Bitcoin was never going to scale. And based on the current trajectory of the way it is on-chain, it was true. The Lightning Network was just kind of coming out right when SegWit was coming on, and SegWit helped with that process.
Let's back up even further, and this is a very nuanced discussion. So I just want to back up a little bit more and say
Yeah, go ahead.
what we mean by scale is how many transactions you can have, like just how many transactions Bitcoin can handle per day to actually compete with credit card companies and banks.
Yeah, I think right now it can do 7 or 11 transactions per second on the base layer, where Visa and MasterCard can do, 45,000 transactions per second. That might be correct, 20,000, somewhere in that range. I forget what it is.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but I think it's a couple 100,000 per day. Not where it needs to be to take on Visa until we had Lightning. But
Yep.
going way back at the time, we didn't have this solution.
Yeah. So there was a lot of contentious argument between basically big blockers and small blockers, as we're calling them. We who are in the Bitcoin community now are considered small blockers. I won't list the other altcoins. You can look them up if you want, but basically,
no, I think it's worth going into, right? You have
you wanna?
Bcash. Yeah. They are a result of this war, right?
Yeah.
And it blows my mind, man, that people are still swayed by their argument, or they think there's like this value when the value of those things is just plummeted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
they do get the altcoin pump with everything else slightly, but it's not even close.
Yeah, I agree. So ultimately it was the Bcash fork, and then even Bcash forked from that into BSV. And it's just very interesting. So it's big blocks versus small blocks. Big blocks were trying to centralize who can run nodes. And when you centralize things, it becomes, a single entity or a risk for an attack vector, basically. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to increase the block size. And yeah, you can jam a lot more transactions per second in, but you're basically taking Bitcoin and you'd be basically becoming Visa, but just slower on a worse database. That is this blockchain that they, blockchain, not Bitcoin is their slogan. And by doing that, it slows up or they're trying to centralize and trying to speed up transactions, but they're compromising decentralization in doing so. Alex, if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think the consideration is just on the outset. I don't think there is like a right and a wrong here. There, like at the time, it was just like, okay, we have this problem. Like, what are we willing to trade off to try to solve it? And there were a lot of, I mean, there were some very like ethically weird things that happened in terms of how people thought like new developments should be introduced to Bitcoin, and making agreements, breaking those agreements. Businesses, like, do big businesses run Bitcoin? Do the exchanges, Brian Armstrong, get to choose what happens next? Like, is it Adam Back? Is it me and you, just like node runners? Like, so I mean, we could go into that a little bit. I don't think I'm well versed enough on this yet quite to like really crush that opinion, but I'd be interested to know what you think, Chris.
Yeah, I guess what was the question again, briefly?
Just like over, like, since the block wars, like what the block size war, like what do you think has changed, and like what did we learn from that? Because it seems like we maybe didn't learn enough to prevent a big contentious chain split from happening. Like it seems like CTV almost ignited something like that again there for a second. What's up?
Yeah, you go ahead, Q.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess the one thing that we learned is that the network's resilient, or at least, Bitcoin is very resilient to it, as some of the other ones are being delisted from exchanges right now. And ultimately we were right. But a lot of people back then in 2017, it was a scary debate. I was not in the space. I don't think Alex was. Q, were you in during the block size wars or not really in the Bitcoin? Okay. So none of us were in it, but talking to people that were.
I was in at the end of it, but I was not educated enough to partake in it. I was just in Bitcoin and crypto for the price at that point.
Yeah. So, but in talking to a lot of people that lived through it, they said it was scary because so you've got all these companies, all these centralized entities, Coinbase, all these other companies from Silicon Valley, these billionaires, millionaires, whatever it may be, claiming that Bitcoin's going to die, they're going to change over, that this network's going to die. And then ultimately you kind of have the pleb army, or the people that like the plebs, or the people that are like believe in Bitcoin, that were saying we're not going to change. And basically, I mean, not to bring up the change the code argument again, but they're saying you have to. We're the bigger network. We're going to fork you off and do all this. And basically, they said we don't care about the price. And the way that they implemented this change is basically they copied all of Bitcoin's ledger because it's open source. And they basically did an airdrop of those tokens, meaning that you had a balance of, let's just say you had 10 Bitcoin. You then all of a sudden in your wallet, if you're able to accept it, had 10 Bitcoin cash. So a lot of the hardcore Bitcoiners dumped Bitcoin Cash immediately as it came online, where a lot of the Bitcoin Cash people were dumping Bitcoin at the exact time. So, I mean, if you're around and at one point in time, they were pegged 1-to-1, meaning that they were the exact same value. And then the free market took over and they both went haywire, up, down, and all over the place. And so basically you have 20% of the market in terms of buying power. I guess from what it sounded like, it was like 80% of the people, or it seemed that way in the sentiment of like all these powerful corporations and companies were saying, we're going to kill you off. Your thing's going to be worthless. And the price ultimately, as it rode up to 20K and then it crashed, I mean, that was a big part of that. That was partly some of the companies were dumping Bitcoin and trying to, and they were also taking out shorts, and people were doing crazy things like, oh, we know that they're going to dump the price. So if we take out a short, you're pushing the price further down. But then Bitcoiners are trying to dump the Bitcoin Cash and try and they're trying to sell their Bitcoin Cash at the same time to buy Bitcoin. I even talked to one of my buddies who's been in the space since I think 2012. And he was saying that he's like, he never even accepted the Bitcoin Cash. He basically burned it. He did it some roundabout way that like it went to his addresses, but he like burned them by sending them to either like an op return or basically saying like F you to and he said
that's definitely not the move. Jesus Christ.
So his thing was like, he said it was unethical to even accept it in the first place. And I know there's a few people that said, oh, it's a free dividend that you're flipping into Bitcoin. He's like, I have no resentment. Would I have like way more Bitcoin? I would, but he's been retired since like 2018, 2019. So he's doing quite well, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would definitely accept the free Bcash and flip it into Bitcoin.
He's been in since 2011, 2012 timeframe. So he's doing quite well. He's like, yeah, I work when I want to kind of deal. So
I mean, I just think, I don't know what to do except encourage people to go read the Block Size War or like listen to it on Audible, because there's just so many layers to this. I have to go through it again, man, because it was just too complicated to get my whole head around. And there's like the ASIC boost thing. There's just like, there were so many contentious debates happening at the same time, and so many interesting people who were in the space then that are really not relevant now.
Yeah, I would definitely say, Bitcoin has no heroes, and even people that have been in the space a long time, maybe there's a select few. Adam Back is one that comes to mind, or he's really the only one.
He's still crushing it, but look at Roger Ver. I mean,
yeah, or even CSW or some of the other people, we don't need to go down the laundry list of names that have defunct from Bitcoin, but it's really crazy to think about. And ultimately what that shows is that the minority can still win, even if the majority or the purchasing power or whatever is going against you. And, there was a lot of companies that said they were going to do it, but ultimately the incentives of normal Bitcoin as it is, BTC, was way stronger than any of these forks. And the incentives align or what's Charlie Munger's quote after he criticized Bitcoin? Show me the incentives and I will show you the outcome. Bitcoin is winning from a market cap, from a price appreciation, from adoption, like all these different things, while some of the other ones are being delisted from exchanges. Do you need any more proof than that? So.
Yeah.
Yes, he does need more proof than that. Can I jump in here though? Because I want to answer the question presented earlier, which was like what did we learn from the block size wars, and like did we learn enough? And I think it was interesting when Chris pointed out, like, look, I got into Bitcoin during the tail end of 27, at the beginning of 2018. That's when it became like Bitcoin is on my radar. I'm paying attention to it as an investment vehicle. I was not paying attention to the technology behind it or really trying to bother myself with the other sort of technical side of this. And we have a new class of Bitcoiners as well that have since come in after the block size war. We will continue to have new classes of people that will come further and further away from the block size war. In the same way that like the generations that were born before the Great Depression in the Great Depression and immediately after the Great Depression, they felt the repercussions. They heard the stories directly from the survivors, what they had to deal with, and sort of the outcomes of it. Whereas, like, I may have heard like a story offhand from a friend's grandmother or from a teacher, but like my family, removing the fact that we're immigrants, like didn't really feel the depression and didn't deal with the American Great Depression. And I think we're witnessing something similar as we remove ourselves further and further from that period in time. We will start to see more people come into Bitcoin, and then slowly but surely, the vast majority of Bitcoiners will be those who never even experienced or even know what the block size wars was, what they're fought over, and what the outcomes were. I think personally, based on what I've studied and learned, my biggest sort of takeaway from that is the purity of the Bitcoin code and allowing it to operate as it should with the bare minimal of changes, if any changes are ever introduced. But I fall into the class of, and I always say it wrong, monetary maximalist.
So you are rejecting the OPCTV?
I'm not necessarily rejecting OPCTV, but like, why? I've not really been given a valid enough explanation for why.
It's good for exchanges, man. It's good for exchanges. It makes it cheaper for them to pay out.
Of course, Brian Armstrong is saying it's good for exchanges, so therefore we need this change. but like beyond helping the biggest whales in the market, like who does this really help? How does this service the individual Bitcoin user? How does this service a merchant who's trying to receive Bitcoin on the Lightning Network? Does this actually make that transaction easier for them? Or is this now an extra line of code or an extra block of code that essentially slows down the program? Because that's another layer to all of this. The longer your code is, the more inefficient you are, and the longer it takes to run through.
Well, the thing is,
as you keep adding blocks to code blocks, I mean, not a block on a blockchain, there will come a point where we've added more code than the original Bitcoin code. I'm not purist enough to say, hey, what Satoshi created that's it. That's the bee's knees. He thought of everything. No, of course not. The code needs to be updated in the right way and for the right reasons. And sometimes a solution that's presented on the base layer doesn't need to be a solution on the base layer. It can be a solution on a second or third layer.
I gotta stop you there though, Q, because okay, so one, this can't be on a second or third layer. This would have to be on the base layer. But also, Satoshi programmed in these op returns as opportunities, predicting that people would want to make adjustments to Bitcoin in the future. Now, he nixed a great deal of them because there was too much room for error, as you said. But actually, the kind of weight in terms of code this would add to Bitcoin is not very much. I don't think it's that much of an issue. I think the issue is more, I'm going to regret how I phrase this, whatever I say it, but I think Jeremy seems to think that because this is not harmful or no one can prove that it's going to harm Bitcoin, therefore it should be included. And I'm not convinced it's worth including something just because it doesn't fuck everything else up, right? I mean, he often points back to like, well, you guys included Taproot, no one had issues with that, and it's like, well, yeah, the trade-offs like for Taproot's great for Lightning users, like not quite off the bat, but over time it's just going to continue to benefit us.
So,
whereas OPC, what's up?
Yeah, let me jump in. I feel like no one here is qualified to really talk about like the technical aspect of this, but beyond that, like what the conversation is a social aspect. How do we activate things, and what does the community buy in? What does core play into that? Like, this is like how do we activate software? How do we gauge consensus? How do we move forward on this kind of stuff? We've only had different scenarios play out in the past. I mean, the Taproot thing was very interesting because it was relatively easy and we coordinated really efficiently and we were celebrating it at the time, but is that an attack vector in itself? I don't know. Again, this is like, so it's not like, I don't think we can even talk about the technical aspect. And sorry to just jump in on your convo, but I felt the urge to.
No. I mean, I think we're pretty much in line. Like, I was just like trying to correct something from Q, but Also, like, you're right. There's like two conversations being had. Is OpsCTV good, bad? Should we have that? Yes, no. But also just like, how do we adopt? Like, how do we upgrade? Should we upgrade Bitcoin? How do we go about it? Because this is, like you said, every situation so far has been like unique. And that doesn't set a good precedent going forward, right? We'd rather have an understanding as users, as miners, as exchanges, as core developers, like, how do we go about this? So yeah, definitely second that.
I mean, it almost feels like, to a degree, first off, I'm a little confused, Alex, as to what you disagreed with me, because I kind of felt like the point you were making was the same point that I was trying to make.
Oh, that I thought you were saying I thought you were saying like OpsCTV added like something substantial in terms of weight to the code, and that's not the case.
No, I'm not saying this is so much weight in the code, but I'm just saying the precedent that you start setting of, hey, this isn't that much and this doesn't really do anything. So like, what's the big deal if we add this? This doesn't harm it. Well, this next change or this next update, it also doesn't really add a lot. But now you transform that and you go forward 100 years, 150 years, and then you start to have 50 to 100 of these, like, hey, this change didn't really add a lot, really harm.
That's the argument. Does Bitcoin need to change at all? Like, in terms of like, do we need more functionality for it as a money, or is it perfect?
There's a counter perspective, and again, this is not my perspective. I'm just trying to bring up the counter perspective, which is that Bitcoin is only small enough for everyone to coordinate around some changes right now. And as it gets bigger, it'll become impossible to coordinate around changes. So if we are going to build in features, if we are going to make improvements for like the long run, it has to happen now. I don't know if I necessarily, I probably completely disagree with that, but I definitely would say that a lot of people working on the code feel that way. And yeah, I don't know. Again, I think from when it comes to like technical opinions, it's really hard from me gauging everyone on this call for any of us to have any commentary that has any weight. So take all of this with a grain of salt, but I don't know. It's it is a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I would say like we say that, but okay, we're the ones running the node. So like, if we do just look into it, you know what I mean? As you educate yourself about that, that's one of the best parts about OpsCTV. It forced everyone to go fucking read about like, how does Bitcoin change and grow, right? It gives us an opportunity to add to our technical understanding. But yeah,
sure. I mean, everyone participates in consensus, right? And ultimately, we can all have a choice to upgrade our node or not. But I don't know. Again, like it just gets tricky when we talk about like details of what can do what, and just like I don't know. I just like it's way above me. So
it's fine. We're not allowed to have opinions on technical stuff, apparently.
No. You know what? You know what else is way above me? Everything we talk about in macros. So thank God Ansel's here to be a guide through the craziness that is the global economy.
On that note, we are going to cut to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to give you guys a brand new episode of FedWatch with Ansel and CK. So stick around.
Bitcoiners, welcome back to FedWatch. I'm just cutting Q straight off. I guess that's what's happening today. Cut off Alex, now cutting off Q, but we're going to just jump right into it. We have not talked about what is happening in Asia very much, and there is a lot happening in Asia. Yes, our last week's show was very much focused kind of on Western central bankers, Europe, IMF, the Fed. But now we're going to talk about China and Japan. I think I've been seeing a lot of headlines about Japan, and I've been seeing a lot of crazy videos from China. Ansel, I want to kick it back to you.
Yeah, big show with all that stuff. Before we kick off there is a huge meeting happening right now, and that is the FOMC. So they are meeting today and tomorrow, and they will be coming out with their policy decision tomorrow. So one day after we're recording live. Perhaps I'll do another midweek update for that, but I wanted to share my screen if I could, guys. Am I up for that? All right. Share screen. So just finding the proper thing here. And I want to show the likelihood of the decision here is pretty cut and dry. Everyone's saying that it's 98% that it's going to be a 50 basis point hike, 1% saying a 25 basis point hike, and 0% saying a 75 basis point hike. So we can, be pretty confident that that is going to happen. And by the way, this is the CME Fed tracker tool that is called FedWatch. So we might have to have a little talk with them about branding. Anyway, so stop sharing. Yeah, some big
cease
things
and desist.
Some big things also about the US. CPI is going to be coming out a week from tomorrow. So we'll have to be covering that next week as well. And the GDP number for Q1 came in negative. And I don't know if you guys have been talking about that on all your other live streams, but this is, the textbook recession is 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. So it's kind of a backward looking measure. But we could be smack dab in the middle of a recession right now. And this is why I think this period, these last maybe 4 weeks and then about 2 months into the future, very important for Bitcoin, very important for the global economy. I've been surprised with how well Bitcoin has been holding up in this wild time. So that's my intro. Do you want to talk about Bitcoin at all, Christian?
No, I honestly find moments like this where I really appreciate Bitcoin's strength is when Bitcoin is just flat and then tech and yuan are falling off a cliff. So, we're seeing fears and slowdown of excitement in real estate. Looks like maybe a bubble is popping there. We'll see. But I love seeing Bitcoin's stability here. That's really where Bitcoin is very, very underrated, and you love to see it. You saw a little bit of that, kind of in early, after the big crash in March of 2020, where Bitcoin was just kind of flat while things were kind of shaking out. But, it's really nice to see this right now. So good point.
Yeah, consolidating with all the geopolitical and global macro bad news, we still have good news for Bitcoin with the different countries and stuff, and we're flat. So this is a great time to consolidate for Bitcoin. And I think it's setting up a nice floor for the future. But anyway, should we go on to China? Let's get going with this. Okay, so China lockdowns continue in Shanghai. They are, right now, there's still about 4 million of the residents of Shanghai are under hard, strict lockdown in their homes. 6 million are prohibited from leaving their complex of their building, their residential area. And all of the city has some restrictions. This weekend, it looked like there could be light at the end of the tunnel because on Saturday and Sunday, they reported 0 new COVID cases or Omicron cases in Shanghai. And so everyone was like, oh my gosh, this could be it. We could start, ending the lockdown. But then Monday came and they had 50 more cases, and today they had some more. So the end of the lockdown in Shanghai doesn't seem to have any end. And also these new cases are in regions that were not heavily locked down. So it could be that more people enter into the hardcore lockdowns in Shanghai, and things get worse before it gets better. Going on to kind of the outcomes of this.
Real quick, before we jump into the outcomes, can we just say that on this show for the past 2 years, we've been talking about why all the pundits are wrong about China's success with COVID, and that they are actually setting themselves up for infinite lockdowns, whereas the West is, shaking it off and actually kind of almost becoming tolerant to some of these measures. So, I mean, I think we've been calling this dynamic for a long time. 2 years later, it is, I mean, sad to see, but it's also vindicating to see that, we were right in saying that the short-term, good results of Beijing's policies, were not going to seem very favorable in the long term.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been right on China in many different ways as well. A lot of people are talking about China being the rising power and using that authoritarian model to, copy that around the world. And we're like, no, this is not a Thucydides trap. There is not this rising power of China and a declining power of the US. And we're seeing that play out right now. So the outcomes of this, so far in Shanghai, the freight traffic has plunged 81% in the last 3 weeks, year over year. So that's a very significant, obviously, amount. Now, nationwide, freight traffic is down 15%, and many of these areas are not restricted. So a lot of these areas down south into Shenzhen and Hong Kong and places, they're not experiencing hardcore lockdowns like Shanghai is, yet the entire country is down 15% year over year for freight traffic. So far, the lockdowns have spread to 48 cities. It's affecting 340 million people. And overall, 80% of the economy does have some form of COVID restriction on it right now. So there is still room to get worse. And we kind of see that going into Beijing. So Beijing's numbers have slowly started creeping up over the last couple of weeks. And they had citywide testing twice, I think, already this week. And if they were bad numbers, they are very scared that they could get a similar lockdown to Shanghai. So people have been hoarding food. They've been staying close to home, not going on trips, things like that. Because in Shanghai, it was a matter of hours in some parts of the city where they were told, get home, you're in lockdown. So the people of Beijing, they're, worried about that exact same kind of dynamic happening over there. Let's see.
Honestly, the people of Beijing are lucky that they kind of saw it be telegraphed in Shanghai, because, at least they could prepare. But again, the uncertainty, it's crippling, it's debilitating to society. And, the punchline is that it's questionable the measures even work, right? That's the punchline.
Yeah, they absolutely don't work. And I saw the number of symptomatic COVID cases in Shanghai. It's 750 symptomatic cases with Omicron, which is, obviously less bad.
I mean, it's effectively nothing.
Yeah. So they're doing all of this. They're crashing their entire economy for 750 people that have a flu type symptoms. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But I wanted to get into the PMI. So I wanted to share my screen again with the PMI. So this is the Chinese PMI. That is the Purchasing Managers Index. And you can see the last 2 months have just been down, straight down. 48, any number under 50 is contraction. And so last month was 48, and this month in April was 46. So it's accelerating into a contraction. I have another chart here that has a few more numbers. This includes manufacturing in white, new factory orders in blue, new export orders for factories, non-manufacturing, and construction. And you can see everything is headed downward at a fast rate. Now, this is different in my mind than if you look, 2019 into the original coronavirus, it was kind of trending up. Now, since late 2021, the PMI has been trending down, and it's now accelerating down at an increased clip. So this tells me that this isn't over. We haven't hit a bottom in China, and the economy is going to get a lot worse. So that's going to affect supply chains. That's going to affect CPIs around the world, and possibly monetary conditions. If they start easing dramatically, how is that going to affect global liquidity? So that's what I have some more charts here. Let's go into the Chinese yuan. Over the last couple of weeks, it has really started weakening dramatically, and a lot of people think that this is due to a currency manipulation. But if you look back in 2015, you can see that there's a very straight line. I know this is probably a small chart for people watching on YouTube, but there's a very straight line, and then all of a sudden they lose control and it pops up. But we didn't see that this time. So most likely this is not due to strict devaluation of the yuan versus the dollar. It is a symptom of their easing and US dollar strength. So let's see what else other chart I have. Another thing, when you talk about China, you need to talk about Hong Kong, because obviously they have been increasing their control over Hong Kong. And I wanted to show this peg of the Hong Kong dollar to the US dollar, because it shows what a real good currency peg looks like. So at the top here is the top of the range, 7.85. And at the bottom is the bottom of the peg range at 7.75. Back in 2018 and 19, it bumped up against the top of this peg multiple times, but you don't see any wicks coming through there. Okay, that will be important later when I show you a chart of the Japanese yen and stuff. So there is no slipping out of this range, and it is under hardcore control. Okay, stop sharing my screen. Do you have any comment on that, or should we just keep going?
A lot of good information there. Now let's keep going. And again, really crazy to see, that few cases. And again, throughout this thing, China's always been known to be giving false information about, case numbers, et cetera, unreliable. So, who knows how reliable that information is, but whatever the case number is, they are shutting down in these cities. That's for real. The boats piling up in their ports is for real. And it's crazy to see that. And then on the flip side, we just continue to see the West open up more and more.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get the Huntsman from Twitter at Man Integrated on the show in the next couple of weeks, because he's a logistics supply chain guy. And because I want to pick his brain about what's happening. From my understanding is the boats or the ships that are starting to show back up in China, maybe from Europe or the US, they left before the lockdown started. So all the effects that are going to hit the supply chains have yet to really manifest in any way, shape, or form. And we're about to get the full frontal effect of these lockdowns. So I think that's interesting, just to see how there's a delay and why there's a delay from the lockdown starting to it affecting people all over the world, because it takes time for these ships to get around, right? To go back and forth between all these different ports. So hopefully we can get him on there and talk about that. All right, I have a real estate update also in China. We were one of the first shows in Bitcoin, probably the first show in Bitcoin, and one of the first shows in macro. I know I picked up on it from other people, but very few people were talking about Evergrande when we started talking about Evergrande and the Chinese real estate market. But despite their massive subsidies and their mortgage interventions, the market continues to slide. More and more developers are having trouble paying off their debts. The government, local and maybe provincial or the larger regional governments, are seizing property from these property developers still and making it harder for them to meet their debt payments. So it's just getting worse. There have been multiple surveys. The largest 100 property developers in the country, their sales fell 52% year over year. And that was the latest reading before the lockdowns. So the lockdowns are going to crash that even more. Bank loans to the public have dropped as 50% as well. And another survey shows that 54% of depositors plan to save more money versus spend more money. And that is very important, obviously, in a debt-driven economy, and in an economy where they're trying to move from middle income to consumer spending driven. So if they're going to have their population cut back on consumer spending, there's no way they're going to jump out to be, they're going to be stuck in this middle income trap longer and longer. Now, the CCP has shown some signs of loosening the 3 red lines. This was the regulation that came out last summer that kind of kicked off all this insolvency and all the property developers. What they said was they're letting local authorities have a little bit of leeway on how to apply these 3 red lines, in their local area. So they didn't withdraw the 3 red lines, but they massively weakened them. So I thought that was interesting. Other than that, I haven't been paying too much attention to the high yield bond market. I know that they're selling for about 20 cents on the dollar still in these real estate developers. So that's pretty much bankruptcy level for all of these high yield bonds over there in China. And there is still a differential between how they're treating offshore debt versus onshore debt. They're not paying the offshore people. They are paying the onshore bonds. So this is going to affect their foreign direct investment going forward. And people that have parts of their supply chain, or companies that have parts of their supply chains in China, they're going to see how they're treating the different types of debt, onshore versus offshore. And so it's just going to, I think, exacerbate or accelerate the diversification away from China in supply chains. So do you have any comments on those things, Christian?
I mean, again, like, we very recently had Ray Dalio publishing, the beginning of the yuan standard, the rise of China. We've had folks like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger praise China, dump on Bitcoin multiple times in recent years. Where are they missing? I guess, like, just go a little deeper, because you're saying one, you've been right, but 2, you're saying, like, 1, they're 100% wrong, and then beyond that, there's actually going to be diversification away from China, that China is unsustainable where it is right now, and it's all going to fall apart.
Well, I was on the China bandwagon for a long time. I was a fan of Jim Rogers, and he was a big China bull for a long time. He said, you need to get a degree in agriculture and learn Cantonese. He said, then you'll have a successful life. But I think what people are missing now is that China is, one, in a dangerous neighborhood. And so they have to worry about all their different borders that they have. They have to worry about the authoritarian nature of their regime, that they only stay in power by, keeping the people down. And so all of that is an expense. So how have they been able to bend or grow over the last 20, 30 years? And I think it's just a big credit bubble. So when I look forward, I just see it harder and harder for them to maintain their standard of living and maintain this credit bubble from popping. So that's what I see. I just see China as one big credit bubble waiting to pop.
Is that credit bubble popping now, or will they be able to push the can down the road? It's crazy to see them treating onshore creditors and offshore creditors differently. Like, that can't be good for confidence.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're having a hard time getting banks to lend. And then I mentioned that stat about 54% of depositors plan to save more money instead of borrow and spend. And so people are starting to turn around and become more frugal with their money, and they don't want to borrow. So an economy that's driven off of credit creation, and you're having all these signs of pulling back on credit, that's not going to be good. Overall, I will say that their stimulus differs a little bit from the US. So we got our stimmy checks, right, direct to the people, where China likes to do infrastructure spending. They don't send out stimmy checks to the people. So those types of spending projects have diminishing marginal returns. You can only build so much infrastructure, right? The first piece of infrastructure you build is going to have dramatic increase in productivity. But as you go down 2 decades down the road and you're trying to continue to spend more and more on infrastructure, you're coming to the point where you're going to have negative returns from building up the country even more. And that's one of the kind of critiques that people have had about China over the last 5 to 10 years is they are just overbuilt in so many different ways. And if they just keep pressing on this infrastructure pedal, something's going to break. It's not going to fix the problem. So I don't know if they will be able to push it off as long as, say, the United States has.
Well, again, we'll see. It's going to be really interesting to watch it all play out. And again, it's really interesting to see the China-Hong Kong dynamic and what that is doing with the Hong Kong dollar. We definitely need to continue to track that throughout the week. So I'm sure we'll get to it again in the show very soon. Do you want to move over to Japan?
Yeah, and this is a interesting kind of correlation is growing between Japan and the Japanese yen and the Chinese yuan. For years and years, Japan was more tied into the broader global economy with Europe and the US. And over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, it seems that Japan has been getting more and more exposure to China. They have been getting closer and closer financially. And we kind of see that in their currencies. So the Japanese yen is devaluing at a very quick rate as well, along with the Chinese yuan. And I have a chart of that. Let me just share this. So here's the Japanese yen. I hope you guys can see that. And it is over the last, I would say, month and a half, gone from 115 up to 130. And this is the highest that it's been in decades. If you look at the inflation adjusted number, so I tweeted this out this morning, but if you look at the inflation adjusted number, this is the real, quote unquote, real exchange rate. And it is at the most devalued or lowest for the yen in 50 years since 1971. And we all know what happened in 1971. So this is a big change for Japan. Even though their official CPI is still sitting at 0.8%, they're one of these countries that haven't really experienced the inflation that others have, but they're sitting at 0.8% in March. But they're kind of worried because the yen is devaluing so quickly against all other currencies, not just the dollar, but the euro and the yuan. Even though it's going in the same direction as the euro and the yuan, it's devaluing faster than those other two. I also wanted to share real quick the peg. So remember, I told you that we'd come back to that, what a real peg looks like, and what a not a real peg looks like. So this is yield curve control. And we all know that people out there in the macro space have been talking about how the US will eventually have to go to yield curve control in order to contain their interest rates. Well, Japan has a policy that they won't let the 10-year get over 0.25%. Well, they have broken that peg. And you can see over the last few weeks, it's gone up as high, I believe, as 0.27%. So not a lot, but you can tell the difference between this peg that's not really a yield curve control and this, where there's no wick coming out of the top of that Hong Kong dollar. So I thought that was very interesting and wanted to point it out. We'll see. They're worried about losing control of their economy.
Do you think they will lose control of their economy?
No, I watched a video this morning on a panel by some guys here. Let me get their names. It is Toru Sasaki. He's the managing director and head of the Japanese market research with JP Morgan in Tokyo and JP Morgan Securities in Japan. And Jesper Cole, he's the executive director of Japan-based Monex Group. And they had this panel discussion. They were talking about it doesn't look good financially for Japan, but there is a ray of hope that, Japan has been stuck in this malaise for 30 years. Since 1990, they've been stuck in this stagnation economy with very low inflation, very low growth. And this is possibly giving them the opportunity to roll that investment that they've had a lot of foreign direct investment into other places in the world over the last 30 years. This is an opportunity for them to invest back in Japan. And if they can do that, Japan will have a quick recovery. But they also say that in the near term, the yen could go up to 150. So I thought that was interesting, making some calls on Forex. But I tend to think that Japan is in a better position than China, but they are much more linked than they have been in the past. So Japan has to worry about if China falls off a cliff, then Japan could follow.
Why do you think Japan is so much more linked now versus in the past where it kind of had some more international relevance? Is it just because the malaise has gone so far that it just makes sense that they become more linked to their, their neighbors, and their biggest neighbor being China? Or like, I guess, why is this dynamic kind of playing out in your opinion?
Well, Japan used to be an important exporter, but that kind of changed with Fukushima. Around the time of Fukushima, they've now become a net importer. And that's one reason why I don't agree with when I say that the US's future looks like Japan over the last 20 years. And people say, oh, no, Japan's different. They're net exporters. Well, they haven't been for almost 10 years. So this, Japan used to be a bigger part of the global financial system and the global economy because they were net exporters. But over the last 10 to 20 years, they have really invested outside of their country. So they've opened up factories for their automobile industry. They've opened up factories outside of Japan. They have slowly but surely gotten out of the carry trade. And I think they've gotten more invested with Chinese banks and Chinese real estate sector. So, that is how they become de-linked a little bit from the rest of the world and more linked with China.
So, of course, this is FedWatch, the Bitcoin and macro show. We've talked about, with things looking bad with the euro and a strengthening dollar being everyone's enemy, that puts
Yes.
Bitcoin in the optimal position to benefit and to be the kind of universal safety blanket that people turn to potentially in negative situations. Does that
Yes.
also apply with China and Japan? We know that there's constraints in China now, given their aggression towards Bitcoin, but that hasn't stopped things. Like, is that the same situation?
I think it is. I saw somebody on Twitter saying that China was going to reverse their ban in 3, 2, 1. So it's getting to a point where these countries are going to have to adopt Bitcoin if they want to have any sort of growth in the future. And that's what I've been saying for a long time is when you look at the traditional legacy system, you look at how it's devolved and how it's stagnated and how it's all built on credit. And the best option or the best outcome is just stagnation. It's either recession or stagnation. Those are the two options you have with the traditional system. And so all of these people, including Europeans, including Chinese and Japanese, they're going to look at this new system, Bitcoin, as being red shoots and a place for growth and a place for expansion. So yeah, I think the same dynamic with chasing capital out of Europe and into Bitcoin is also going to be at play in China and Japan. Why that hasn't shown up in the price yet, we will see. We will see.
All right, interesting. Bitcoin stands to win. People stand to win from Bitcoin winning. That's a powerful cycle. We talk about Bitcoin as where there's going to be growth and that there are going to be two separate and competing ecosystems, economies, the legacy economy, and then the new upstart Bitcoin economy. And when you look at the vitals, health vitals for each economy, we see that the legacy economy, although it's much bigger, much more liquid, is showing signs of weakness everywhere. And every single year, Bitcoin's getting more and more healthy.
Yeah, it's more liquid at the best of times, right? But the problem is it's less liquid at the worst of times. And so Bitcoin offers that kind of hedge against liquidity drying up around the world. So I agree with the the other system is bigger and more liquid, except when it's not. And that is the thing. I've been getting more and more on my newsletter on bitcoinmarkets.com. I've been getting more into what are some narratives we could push. And that's a big one, is that, Bitcoin offers the solution today. And it does the traditional system's job better in a lot of cases than it already does. Oh, you're muted.
Ansel, did you watch Jack Mallers' presentation at Bitcoin 22?
Yes.
So what did you think of his concept? Like, really talking about, let's talk about the Bitcoin network and how it competes against other networks today. I mean, I do think he's 100% right. And this isn't a new talk, when this has been something that he's been kind of pounding away at for a while.
What, be more specific? Sorry.
You're saying that Bitcoin's a better solution today. I think you mean monetarily and as an asset and as a store of value. But he's talking about like the network itself is a replacement for the incumbent systems right now. And he's trying to implement that with what he's doing in Strike. But obviously, other companies have, ridden waves that he's started to, and other people can kind of do similar things too.
Well, I think there's a little bit of confusion there between these two things. So liquidity and velocity are different, right? So yeah, there can be, I think Bitcoin's liquidity characteristics are pretty stable. You can always find a buyer for Bitcoin, and their Bitcoin does not have counterparty risk. So it's going to be much more liquid in times of credit crisis than the traditional system, right? Because the traditional system is pure counterparty risk. So I think that Bitcoin's liquidity characteristics in that sense are much more stable than the traditional system. That's why I'm saying it's kind of better today than the traditional system. Now, on the case of velocity and transactions and things, I think Bitcoin is ready to do it. Bitcoin is definitely ready to take over some of the roles of, say, day-to-day transactions. Like Jack Mallers is obviously doing excellent work on that side. I just saw a headline that I think it was from Bitcoin Magazine that Bitcoin transferred more value last year than Visa did, $13 trillion worth of value or something like that. So yeah, Bitcoin is ready. It's just a matter of getting more people have to hold it. More people have to want to hold it for Bitcoin to be used in transactions. So does that answer the question?
No, yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think with what Jack's doing too, he's even taking Bitcoin, the asset, away from Bitcoin, the network, beyond. But I understand 100% what you're saying from a liquidity perspective. And I agree. And I think that like Bitcoin's liquidity profiles is only going to get better exponentially from here. So like soon, and when I say hyper Bitcoinization is happening in this decade, people think that that's hyper bullish, but I'm just trying to think of like how much better Bitcoin is in practice. And then as more people get into it, how much better will it be able to compete with the existing system? And I don't think that, Bitcoin's going to be this underdog for very long. I think Bitcoin is actually going to be the superior methodology that people use very soon, and it's going to be obvious.
Yeah, one of the big, I guess, hurdles for the liquidity of Bitcoin is just the market cap. And I remember someone saying, it was some VC that said this years ago. I don't know if it was Mark Andreessen or one of these people, but he's like, the problem is just that I can't send big sums of money through it, right? So if the market cap back then, say, was 100 billion, you can't send $10 billion through the network. Same thing with the market cap, say, at $1 trillion. Some banks, some sovereigns, they want to be sending transactions in hundreds of billions. And that's just not enough room to send these large transactions. So that's why I say you need more holders, you need more demand to increase that market cap. And that gives room for these larger transactions. But on a liquidity side of, say, in the millions, not in the billions, but in the millions, all the transactions that happen that need liquidity in the million to 100 million range, Bitcoin has them covered. It's just when you get into the $1 billion range of transactions that Bitcoin's liquidity, has a ways to go. So that will come in time. The price is the only thing that matters. You need higher price to get more liquidity for these higher value transactions.
That is a good distinction, right? Like what you're saying effectively is like within this kind of like value band, Bitcoin's already better. And that's what Jack is taking advantage of, right? Jack has identified that, hey, within this value band, Bitcoin and the Lightning Network is already better than the existing system. I can tap into it right now and leverage that to serve this group of people. And then as that band expands with Bitcoin's market cap, then it opens up to more and more people. And I think that's when things get really, really interesting. Ansel, this has been a great show. It's awesome getting to learn about the happenings in the macro and central bank level of things with you. I think you bring an enormous amount of alpha. Where can people learn a little bit more about what you do, your research, and where can people follow you?
So I'll just say up front here that I write a companion post to all of these episodes. So if you go to Bitcoin Magazine and you look for the companion post for this, it has much more detail with links and all of that. Sometimes I misspeak in these episodes. Sometimes I forget to mention something, and that is all corrected in the write-up. So go to Bitcoin Magazine to find that. I write a weekly newsletter on bitcoinandmarkets.com. I also have a pretty much weekly podcast now for Bitcoin and markets. So check out that website.
All right, y'all. Make sure to go follow Ansel everywhere. He's also on Twitter at Ansel Lindner, but go follow him in his real channels. I know he had a pretty good community going on for a while too. So you can definitely learn a lot from Mr. Ansel Lindner. You can find me at CK_Snarks. This was FedWatch. We post this tomorrow on our podcast feed as well as on YouTube. So you can rewind this, listen to it again, watch it with the companion post. So that way you get all the details in full fidelity. But until then, I'm going to pass it back to Q.
One last plug, Ansel. What is the name of the newsletter?
It's a Bitcoin fundamentals report at bitcoinandmarkets.com.
Highly recommend Bitcoin and Markets. The newsletter is awesome. It's this in a lot more detail. So nerds like me appreciate it a lot. We'll cut to a quick commercial break before I try to sell you a bunch of shit. What is up, guys? We're back. Did we do a sats drop when we hit 100?
We did.
All right, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed those free sats because there's no more today. Shout out, Chris. What was the guy's name on Rumble who told me a new strain of weed to try?
I don't know his name.
I want to give him a shout out because those are always my favorite.
I got a
Old
shout out
Saucy.
too.
Great screen name, great username. Thank you for the tip. I'm gonna go try Truffle Monkey now. Alex, sorry, I keep interrupting you.
Oh, you just reminded me, by the way. No, you're not interrupting me, but I definitely have to go to the MIT Bitcoin meetup because weed is legal in Massachusetts, but not in the state that I live in. So I will be running double errands when I go to MIT this weekend. But
Yeah,
also,
but just enjoy paying like $100 for an eighth.
dude,
of
it's
weed.
so expensive. Yeah, no, that's the downside. It fucking sucks. It's super expensive, but worth it anyway.
My brother who
the
lives
other
in Boston literally still buys from a dealer who goes and sources it from out of state because it's still cheaper to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely the move. But the dispensaries do have, broad access. You can get all your fizzy drinks and vapes and all kinds of crazy shit. I don't know. I gotta find one that you can pay in Bitcoin though. That's the move. But also I wanted to shout out Khalil Rountree, our guest from the conference. Y'all remember him? You remember him? Or did you see this, Chris? He was on Joe Rogan. I don't know if they just dropped the episode, but I just started seeing clips about it. I was just texting
I didn't get to see
him
the episode, but yeah, no, it's so cool. You can describe it.
I actually watched during FedWatch, and he talks about the Bitcoin conference, talk about Naomi Park, and just how Bitcoin can help people in general. He has a really, I know that he knew at the conference, he had a really good understanding, but he's since kind of doubled down on his Bitcoin education, and we got to get him back on the show, man. So
yeah, do you want to say what he was? Do you want to say what he was wearing in the episode?
Oh yeah, he was wearing a Ledger necklace, which is really funny because I used to do that when I was in fight camp to get other fighters to buy Bitcoin. I carried my Ledger around everywhere and showed them, like, look, all my money's on this. Like, it's great. Like, very cool. We got to get him a different hardware. We got to get him a cold card on a necklace or something.
Yeah.
Get a gold, not quite as sexy, but get like a gold, you know what I mean?
Gold plated.
Like gold plated. Yeah, exactly.
NVK starts selling 10K, or no, he sells them for $1,800, the price of gold, to just throw in Peter Schiff's face.
Well, you know what you could just take well, then you actually have the Bitcoin around your neck. That might not be a good idea. Like the actual private key, but you could technically take the little card if you had one of those.
I want to throw out just a random thought that genuinely this happened. I don't want any shit for it because this is not my typical type of restaurant, but for a friend's dinner, birthday dinner, we were out at like a bougie ass restaurant in West Hollywood, and they gifted us truly the best sushi I've ever eaten in my life. I love sushi, and this was like top notch. And there was caviar on top of it. I've never tried caviar before. That was great.
Yeah.
And then there was like a gold flake on top of the caviar on the sushi. And like, I've also never eaten gold before. And I genuinely, we all ate it. We all loved it. We were cracking up about it. And then afterwards, I was like, yo, genuinely want to know, like, what's the faux pas of like asking, like, can I just pocket my gold flake? Like, do I have to eat it? Like, what is the market value of this flake of gold?
They're
obviously not.
Yeah, not very much. Gold leaf's very cheap, but yeah, I'm gonna text Khalil and we gotta get him on the show, guys. I think it'd be great.
Q, that was the most
sports rapport with Q.
That's the most fiat thing I've ever heard, Q.
Yeah.
I
Q's
literally
stealing
by
gold
saying I don't want shit
from someone else's restaurant.
Emphasis on never tried caviar, never had gold before, and had them both on a free dish that was given to us.
That was my experience of Q at the conference too. We take him out to eat. He's just trying to steal shit.
We're not trying to get our coworkers in trouble here.
Yeah.
I had caviar for the first time a few years ago at a wedding, and it's very weird. I don't know why it's a specialty thing. I don't know, maybe because it's just difficult to get, but it was like very
eggs.
Very
I
weird.
get it about
unborn fish fetuses.
Yeah, I'll get like that or roe about once a week, and it's like it makes me sad, dude, to be honest, because it's I don't know. Yeah, there's something about it. It's just a little too close to a little too visceral. But I don't really understand how it's harvested. I just don't know enough about it. But yeah.
I mean, there's just like this at the root of it all. It goes back to the fact that there are 5 real taste senses that we enjoy. Caviar has this salty sensation to it, and therefore, like, it's not like this overbearing saltiness to other seafoods. That was my takeaway from it. I was like, oh, this is like a much more muted, softer salt almost. is really what I took from the taste of caviar.
For me, it's a texture thing. I love the texture. It's worth parting. The way we tie everything back to Bitcoin. It's worth parting with Bitcoin for sushi because it's very good.
I love sushi. Caviar, I can't. The texture is weird to caviar, personally.
Really?
It's like sticky. I don't know. Like it was very weird.
I like popping all the little things.
Dude, right? Like it's so much like, do you ever get, this is like real fiat. Do you guys ever
Greek
do like,
in the yogurt thing? Is that what you're going with? Those like fruit things? Yes, I know what you're talking about. That's very fiat, but yes, I get it.
What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're
so if you go get frozen yogurt and then you do like from one of those places.
Frozen yogurt?
Oh, I love frozen. I'm a froyo guy.
This guy comes from Iowa, Q. He doesn't come from the coast like us. So
yeah, I'm
explain
like,
it.
It sounds like some 15-year-old girl dessert.
Soft serve frozen yogurt. Just when you come to LA, I'm going to take you to a spot that's in Santa Monica that's like really, really good, in my opinion. Like really, really good. And at any of these places, it's like soft serve, except ice cream, it's frozen yogurt. And then many of them give you the opportunity to like put your own toppings on it. One of the toppings is a boba type of sweet where almost like a plastic casing, and then inside it's like a gusher fruity liquid sensation. Very similar, in my opinion, when you were describing. I love like biting all the different like caviar eggs, like exact same sensation when you're just doing that with like a candied fruit kind of thing.
Boba's great.
I made fun of Q for the fiat, but this is very fiat food, the frozen yogurt. And the key is getting like not as much ice cream and just loading it with toppings. That's the key.
See, that's the most fiat thing I've heard.
Yeah, I will take that one.
I'm a big ice cream guy. I don't know about this frozen yogurt, but
oh my god,
gelato, dude. When I was in Florence, we'd eat gelato like twice a day.
Oh my gosh,
every
gelato
corner.
in Italy is not the same as ice cream anywhere in the world, other than maybe Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's facts.
Yeah, that's big facts.
Do we have any more Bitcoin related material, or we just
we're just riffing now? We're just riffing.
At this point, I'm just getting
nothing wrong with that. It's
my
our show.
I mean, look, we've been talking about food all day.
We've been talking about Bitcoin all year. It dropped $400 or $500 in the course.
I just threw
37.7.
I'll do another 100 right now. I will buy 100.
Oh, I'll match you. I'll buy 100.
Chris.
I'm broke as hell. I got negative money in my bank accounts.
Chris, you're gonna have more negative money.
Take out a loan. Just do it.
Yeah, you got to do it. Man.
I do. It's called my credit card, and they're
coming. It's okay if you go poor stacking sats.
Yeah.
I could do $5. This might bounce though.
Just stack what you can afford. We're not gonna make you declare bankruptcy yet.
I gotta get this MK4, man. I'm so happy with my cold cards now. It's like a whole thing, but I gotta order it because we need to review one on the show and bring NVK back on and tell him what we like about it.
I think we gotta get you. I got the cold card 3 from the conference.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Remember, everyone was giving me shit because all you assholes.
Oh, you paid for it? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, NVK, if you're
I got like
this,
6 for free, bro.
What the hell? What the hell? You want me to shill your shit? I need it for free. I need to try it out. I need to know how it works because I will never inauthentically be like, oh, this is cool. You should buy it because I get paid. No, I didn't know how it works.
I just realized the original Bitcoin jewelry was at least the only one I'm aware of was by NVK himself. The Open Dime. It's like a way cooler. I love it.
About 100.
I matched you. I think Open Dime. We should give Khalil an Open Dime so we can walk around with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, any other breaking news stories? Well, I like when it comes up on Joe Rogan, man. We gotta sneak Saifedean or Sailor on there or something.
I know. I mean, the only real Bitcoin person he's had other people talk about cryptocurrencies.
Well, he's had Andreas Antonopoulos.
That's true. Those were old
like
ones. But
6 times.
He's had Adam Curry at least twice. I know.
Yeah, Adam Curry's hardcore too.
Adam Curry was very recently too, a couple months ago, and his was very good.
I haven't watched that show in a long time.
I pop in for guests that I'm interested in. Like, I don't know. That's the way I watch it.
Yeah.
That is the way I think most people do it, including our show. But if you're not subscribed, feel free to smash that subscribe button down below.
Yeah. Coming up next, we're having Joe Rogan on this show.
I wish that'd be cool.
We are not out of anything more than I do not want to be dinged for falsely advertising or someone being like, oh, I thought you were no. One day.
I want Q to be on his show one day and reenact the Elon Musk, the weed smoking thing.
If I ever got invited onto Joe Rogan's show, my first response would genuinely be like, I need Joe to consent to the fact that I'm going to just smoke so much weed that we're all going to get. Everyone's going to be high, even if you don't smoke in that room. Like everyone needs to be okay with that. And then
I
I'm
think he's
bringing
cool. I think
Chris
he's
as
cool
my
with that.
guest, and we're getting Chris high.
I think he'd be cool with that, to be honest.
I feel like I could have a great conversation with Joe Rogan.
We're just completely off the rails today, guys.
We definitely are.
All right.
Dude, you told me it was
been going
Tuesday
for
when I
so
woke
long.
up thinking it was Wednesday, so we were already screwed for today.
Oh yeah. Well, we were going for so long that I contradicted myself. So like I go on this huge tirade about eating meat, the greatest thing ever. And then I talk about how caviar is kind of gross because it's like not right to eat little baby little baby fish.
No, it's fine because you also like ice cream because
What's up with that?
all that sugar is necessary in a carnivore's diet.
Oh, I'm into it. I don't eat it though. Not right now.
You know what?
I've been good, man. All I've had today is steak. That's literally all I've eaten. Not even a whole steak, just a little thing.
Little guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I know,
It feels good.
I'm gonna keep calling out Joe Consorti until he stops drinking all the fucking monsters, acting like drinking Monster with his steak diet is healthy.
Monsters.
Stop poisoning your body with that shit. Plain and simple.
You make better financial decisions if you eat right and exercise.
All right. You got anything else, guys? Or Q, you want to send us out?
Use promo code FOMO. Get 10% off of everything in the Bitcoin Magazine store.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, actually, yeah, I've got a show. Go to scarce.city right now. My piece just went up to auction.
If you want to send it to me in the chat on Zoom, Alex, or Slack.
Yeah. Let me send it to you. It looks like there's no bids, so you can jump in and snag it real cheap.
Right two sats. That's what I'm bidding right now.
I think there's a minimum, but I don't know.
10
One
sats.
sat?
Oh no, you can put. Oh shit! No, there is a minimum. It's 100,000 sats. Damn, that's steep.
I was gonna say that's too rich for my blood.
What's that? $40? You just bought $100 worth of Bitcoin. That covers it itself.
Yeah, it's $37. I'll get fucked on shipping if you buy it for $37, but have at it, guys. Go. This is why we don't do auctions. Go bid on the piece.
Yo, actually, speaking of shipping, I did ship something to Canada to a viewer. I hope you get it soon. But also, like, oh my god, the shipping cost to Canada is absurd.
I spent $200 on shipping today.
I don't think I could ever justify living not in, like, if I lived in North America, shipping to not the US is so expensive. Like, oh my God. Amazon has a stranglehold on all of us.
100%. Wait, did I send you the link? Yeah, I did.
You did
All right.
not.
Oh no, I sent it to Q. Sorry.
Yeah, send me the link. I'll drop it in the chat for everyone to check out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, guys, go bid on this piece. I don't know if you hold the piece. I'm trying to think of some cool like physical dividend I can send all the holders. There's only 21 of these. It's this roughly. And no, it's not just paper. It's like a hand pulled lithograph print from a proper printing press, printed on stone, metal. It's an interesting process, but yeah, if you get a hold of one, you'll be one of the 21. So
I have one.
At it. Yeah, Chris has one. I see it in the background sometimes of his video.
Yeah, I need to put it up. I'm waiting for my girlfriend to get here. We're figuring out getting frames and stuff.
Can I get someone in the audience to either approve or officially kill my Joker poster back here?
It's out. Get rid of it.
No. I want audience members to decide because everyone else keeps killing it. And I'm really hoping the audience will be a fan.
We should we could do something funny, putting like a lightning QR code and like you could put comments in the bottom and people can change out our backgrounds and stuff.
You can replace it for a Paul Dano Riddler poster if you want.
No. No. I don't even care that I'm gonna say it wrong. It was Joaquin Phoenix that won the Academy Award for playing the Joker.
Yep.
And I still think
that movie was terrible.
It's very much not, but okay. Heath Ledger's Joker is still the best Joker, let alone the best supervillain ever. And had Heath Ledger been afforded the opportunity to have a film focused on his character, like he would have been given 2 Academy Awards for the same role. That's how fucking good he would have been.
Heath Ledger's my Joker. Joaquin had an amazing performance, but the script of that particular film was so cringy at times that I just couldn't do it. But it was nice to see in theaters. I'll take it back. It's not terrible, but the script is tough.
Cringy in what sense, though?
It was just like the wokiest bullshit I've ever heard. Like some of his monologues, I was just like, oh, like this is acted and enunciated correctly, but the words are all wrong.
I mean, it is definitely supposed to be a commentary on like, this is worst case scenario on how if you treat someone with mental illness. Like that is 100% the narrative that they were trying to push forward. Mm-hmm. Don't forget that the same director and filmmaker actually, I don't know if who wrote Joker?
Todd Phillips. Yeah, he also did the one with Jared Leto.
The filmmaker of this.
Didn't he?
Sorry?
Didn't he do the one with Jared Leto too?
No. Todd Phillips.
No?
His claim to fame is the Hangover trilogy.
Oh, really?
So that's where he really comes from. And then he jumps in and does this Joker movie. So there's like a little bit, I think, of a misalignment of tone, which I buy into that narrative of it. I had a really bad experience just on a personal level at the movie theater for this, but that was like separate to it. I think the storytelling.
He was too high. He thought it was real.
No, I mean, in all honesty, my ex-girlfriend literally sat there pouting, demanded me take her to this movie. And within 5 minutes was like, I fucking hate this movie. Like, I hate doing this shit. I'm like, cool. Well, you asked me to take you to this movie. So you can either go home or you can stay here. But either way, I'm not leaving. That was a genuine fight that happened.
Just to let everyone know, I mean, you can pay for movie theaters with Bitcoin, right? At AMC. Wasn't that a huge deal? They did Dogecoin about a year ago, but now you can pay Bitcoin to see Joker 2, which should be coming out eventually. Joker 2
is not on the dockets.
It is. It says it right here on Google. It's just called Joker 2.
Google never lies.
Oh, Warner Bros hasn't confirmed it, but it's rumored to be in development.
There are too many deals in place.
You're the agent. I'll let you make the call if we get a Joker 2 or not.
Look, I gave you my very high insider intel on like what the Jokers should have been like and like what they were originally planned out, and then Ben Affleck had to decide, no, I actually want to have a movie career. So that ruined that for all of us, but I still like the idea that I presented to you very high in Miami. But on that note, I think we've rambled for long enough and we'll let you guys go on with your day. Use promo code FOMO, get 10% off all things at the Bitcoin Magazine store, including the print magazine. Probably not, but you know what? Hold me to it. Feel free to. And as well as the 2 books we've published, all of the conference swag that we still have available for a limited time. We'll be back tomorrow, and tomorrow will be our last episode for the week. So you're not going to want to miss it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or maybe you do. Who knows? But until
Texas Slim. Don't we have Texas Slim tomorrow?
Yeah.
That'll be good. Oh, tell what's his name to come back. Our vegan friends. All the vegans come back and don't rage quit. Tomorrow we're going to have the butcher himself, the formidable Texas Slim, on to talk Bitcoin, citadels, meat processing. Yeah, it should be fun. So
peace out, everyone.